Hi everyone, and welcome to the ninth lesson in our A Christmas Carol GCSE study guide series. If you haven't seen any of the videos on this channel before, basically we're giving you the whole toolkit of what you need to be successful in writing your Christmas Carol GCSE essay. So over the last 8 weeks, we have gone through Scrooge, the Ghosts, the Cratchits, Fred, Transformation, Christmas, Poverty, and the Supernatural. Each week, we've gone through lots of key quotes to help you with that particular character or that particular theme. And if you haven't seen those videos, I recommend you check them out. I think they've been pretty good for the people who have been watching. Today's lesson, we are going to look at a model answer on Fred. Now, one of the reasons we're going to do that is because often Fred is a slightly weaker character for people, but he also brings out a lot in Scrooge, and he also brings out a lot in terms of themes within the novel. So we're going to look at that together today, and as usual I'll be giving you ideas of how we would get this up to a level 9 and the bits that already are level 9. So some of it will be upgrading and some of it will be already there, most likely. So the question in a nutshell: how is Fred presented in A Christmas Carol? We're going to get it up to level 9. Within his festive allegorical novella, Within his festive allegorical novella, Dickens crafts Scrooge's only nephew, Fred, to function as a model for embracing Christmas. Most importantly, he demonstrates the virtues associated with this time of year, namely goodwill, benevolence, family, and community. Now, I nearly deleted this out because it's not particularly important as an introduction. It doesn't really add very much. We have seen some really good introductions in some of the videos we've done, either here in the Christmas Carol videos, or also stuff like Jekyll and Hyde, Lord of the Flies and stuff. But this one isn't very good. It doesn't really add very much. If you need to write an introduction just for your own sort of lining up mentally what you're going to say in an essay, it doesn't do any major harm to write 3 lines like this, but it doesn't really add very much either in terms of the mark scheme. So just bear that in mind. And that's the reason why I think I actually had another slide that didn't have the intro, because I think I was even maybe not going to read it. But anyway, it does introduce some of the things that Fred he'll talk about with Fred. So a functional model, embracing Christmas, demonstrating virtues of goodwill, benevolence, family, and community. Those are all good things that I'm sure the student will talk about, but you could just dive in and just go straight into those ideas rather than having that little introduction. And you can still get level 9 either way. And you won't waste time doing a little introduction that doesn't have much. So diving into the main paragraphs now. So primarily, the first time the reader meets Fred, he is depicted as an embodiment of the Christmas spirit. Fred is all in a glow when he comes to meet his uncle. The lexical choice glow connotes light, which is often linked with purity and hope, emphasizing that Fred acts as a role model for Scrooge to learn from. Fred spreads his Christmas cheer and is happy despite not being wealthy. Additionally, Fred is said to have walked through the fog and frost. The fog could symbolize the lingering presence of the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s and all the negativity it brought, such as apathy and ignorance. The fog blinkered many capitalists from the fact that the people of London were suffering greatly due to the functions of power failing to protect them and for choosing capitalism over socialism. Fred, being all in a glow, stands out from this metaphorical atmosphere of capitalism and material gain. Whilst doing so, he clears a path for goodness and cheerfulness to seep into Scrooge's melancholy life. He therefore paints himself as selfless and caring, qualities that were quite rare in the 1800s. So this is a really good paragraph because we've got the lexical choice of glowing, connoting light. So we've got techniques in here, lexical choice, connotations. We've then gone into the symbolism of the fog and frost and what that could symbolize. And we've linked that to the context of the play, the idea that the fog could represent the ignorance and apathy of the Industrial Revolution. It's quite a creative idea. And then the idea that Fred is all in a glow suggests that he sort of stands out against this foggy backdrop of London as someone that actually does have some goodness and cheerfulness, which were quite rare qualities in the 1800s. I'm not sure I'd fully agree with that, but definitely they were rare qualities in the upper class in the 1800s. So it's a great paragraph overall, well analysed, lots of good context. Fantastic. Secondly, Dickens cleverly utilizes structure to illustrate the weak relationship between Fred and Scrooge. Throughout the extract, the terms nephew and uncle are repeated several times. Dickens' intention for this, obviously you need a little apostrophe in there, Dickens' intention, the intention that belongs to Dickens, for this technique may have been to remind the reader that Scrooge and Fred are blood relatives. Therefore, they should have a familial connection. This is extremely ironic, considering the way Scrooge communicates with his nephew by calling him poor enough. This remark can be perceived as very rude, dismissive, ignorant, and derogatory to a reader. One may even say their conversation resembles two strangers conversing. Dickens does this to highlight the distance between the two, one whose eyes sparkled and one who is hard and sharp as flint. So we've got some nice juxtaposition there. However, despite this obstacle, Fred continually tried to bridge the gap between them by inviting Scrooge to his annual Christmas dinner every year. From this, we can infer that Fred is persistent in ensuring that his uncle stops marginalizing himself and is included in familial engagements. This is because Fred understands the importance of community and how one can benefit spiritually from it, something Dickens strongly believed people needed to have. Okay, so the weak relationship between Fred and Scrooge as a point at the start is not brilliant because it's more about how Fred is presented or what he brings. So if you talk about there's the weak relationship because Fred represents something better than Scrooge or something, that might be a bit better. Or Fred's resilience, the fact that he is treated terribly by his uncle and yet he still offers him dinner every single year at Christmas. The context of this one is also a little bit weak. So we had some really good, strong context in the first paragraph. This paragraph, we've just got Dickens believed people needed to have, spirituality or religion or whatever. Like, that isn't really a very strong, convincing bit of context to me. Now, remember, you don't have to have context in every single paragraph. So the fact that there isn't much in here isn't that big a deal. I would say the bigger deal is trying to have a weak little bit of context. If you're going to do context, do it properly and strongly, or just don't do it. Don't do a weak little bit like this, because that actually kind of undermines your argument a bit. So it'd be much better to just go with no context, or otherwise go strongly into context and explain that maybe the juxtaposition here is meant to show the strong division between classes. Dickens witnessed that himself because he went from being middle class and educated to his dad going to debtor's prison, to him being a working class for a while and working in a bootblacking factory, for example. So that would be detailed context that would actually really help this paragraph. Whereas just saying Dickens believed in community and spirituality, that's pretty weak. Okay, in Stave 3, The Ghost of Christmas Present takes Scrooge to a bright, dry and gleaming room, which we soon learn to be part of Fred's home. The description of this setting is essential in understanding the character of Fred. The adjective gleaming implies that Christmas spirit is almost leaking out of Fred's house, as it is so full of joy and benevolence. This proves that Fred's house stands out drastically from the cold darkness that many people like Scrooge fall into on special occasions like Christmas. Here, Dickens shows the vast division between those who are wealthy in Christmas spirit and those who are wealthy but lack the spiritual benefits of Christmas through imagery, therefore urging readers to understand that importance of family and relationships in order to avoid isolation. So again, we don't have very strong context overall here. I think that Dickens' work and using Christmas is trying to encourage more generosity between working class and middle and upper class people, especially at Christmas time. I do think that the AO1 and the AO2 are really good. So the understanding of setting and how that links to Fred and how Fred's character produces Fred's setting, that's all really, really good. I think that the analysis is okay. Talking about gleaming sort of helps to show Fred's joy and benevolence. I think that's pretty good. What I would have liked to have seen maybe would have been that juxtaposition again, like Scrooge was in like a dingy cell, right? Like a little quote that shows that Scrooge, if Fred produces gleaming, bright, dry rooms, Scrooge at the moment produces dark, dank, horrible ones. And it would have been good to have that contrast, I think. But other than that, good analysis of what is in here, just needs a bit more context again. Same as a lot of the essays that we've been going through, not just for Christmas Carol, but for other things too. And then we have just a teeny little conclusion. In essence, Dickens utilizes Fred to jolt Scrooge and his targeted capitalist readers out of this apathetic ways via his thoughtfulness, cheerfulness, and extraordinary kindness. This doesn't add anything really. The conclusion here doesn't really add any marks. It's just some extra words. It's a bit like the introduction. So we've got 3 pretty good paragraphs that I think would achieve sort of, you know, this first paragraph in particular, I think probably would have achieved a level 7 or a level 8. The biggest thing with this one really was just, you know what, this one actually, if he could have sustained this, would have probably been about a level 9. I'm sorry, this first one. Really quite good. It had strong point. You know, Fred is depicted as the embodiment of Christmas spirit. Good quotes, well analysed, more detailed context. So actually starts really strong. This next one drops off a little bit. It's not terrible, but the context isn't there. So that drops it probably down to level 7, honestly. That's how important context is. Okay, we need that context. I explained some context you could put in here. Make sure you're revising your context really well for Christmas Carol, because if you don't get enough in and it's not detailed enough, that will drop you potentially a grade or 2, a level or 2. Okay. And then the third one, it starts to get a little bit weaker, but the AO1 and the AO2, so the understanding and the analysis was fairly good, but we would ideally want a second quote, and we would definitely need some stronger context. If you did those things, that would upgrade this from what I would say overall, this is a level 7 piece, having read it through as one thing. I think it starts really strong and it kind of tapers down. You might just, I don't think you'd squeeze into level 8. No, I'm not going to say that because the context is too weak. If you add a bit of context, you get to 8 and then potentially into 9 if you add good context plus some analysis. So it's a level 7 essay. We've upgraded it through what we need to do in order to get up to level 9. So that's the whole point of this. The final thing I'll say, don't add little intros and little conclusions if they don't really add anything. So these intros and conclusions, those 7 lines or whatever, I'd rather he had spent those 7 lines adding some good context. That would have done a lot more for him on the day. So yeah, I think that's everything that I want to say about this model essay. The videos have been a bit shorter, so I apologize to those of you that are used to my videos being sort of 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes even. But, you know, I'm not going to waffle on. There's no need. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them down below. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you.